Reviews are out for Shadow of War, and as you might expect, because it's a major AAA game, they're largely positive. That's not me saying the game's good or bad either way, it's just that's how it works. Big games often get glowing reviews because they're big games and impressive and they got a big budget behind them. I'm not saying the game's bad. I don't know. I'm playing Dragon's Dogma all weekend. Of course, if you're watching videos on this channel, there's a chance you're mostly curious how many of them talked about the loot boxes and what clues they gave as to how obtrusive the glorified gambling mechanics in Shadow of War actually are. Again, as you might expect, a lot of the reviews don't really go into the economy side of things. Some reviewers believe what 2K Games believes, that a game should be judged quote-unquote on its own merits, and those own merits don't include microtransactions no matter how intrusive or unintrusive they may be. No, seriously, I've actually butted heads with people over whether or not microtransactions should be mentioned in game reviews, like professional headbutting. Now, for obvious reasons, I don't think they like me very much. Warner Brothers Interactive hasn't given your old pal Jim Sterling an early advance copy of Shadow of War. But over on NeoGAF, a compilation of certain reviews that have mentioned the loot boxes reference a so-called true ending that makes the player choose between grinding forever or, naturally, reaching inside their pocket, pulling out some cash and handing it directly to WB, which actually logically wouldn't happen. You can't give physical cash to WB through the game. You need a credit card. You need a credit card for that. I'm not here to be all outragey or anything. I want to try the game for myself, if I can even be bothered to fucking buy it. I want to see firsthand, if possible, exactly how bad this grind is, but let's go through what the reviews have said. So over on Polygon, we have, when you run out of in-game money, you have two choices. Make a huge time investment by hunting down orcs in your game world and earning chests via vendetta missions, or spend some real money to get the more powerful orcs you need now. Does the game ever force you to spend money? No, I'm sure you can get to the end of Shadow Wars, that's the final chapter with the true ending, without spending a dime, as long as you're patient and persistent. But locking progress through this mode, and again toward the game's true ending, behind either spending more money or doing tons of tedious busy work, feels at least greedy, if not predatory. Now, I find that interesting because most open world games now are full of missions that are nothing but tedious busy work because a lot of developers just gave up. Open world games stopped being about living, breathing universes where you could explore stuff and go on interesting, varied quests. The Witcher series is one of the last holdouts of that. No, most open world games are just repetitive, grindy, busy work shit. And given the consistent high scores of Ubisoft games, most reviewers are fine with that, but apparently, even by the standards of today, this is grindy. I just find it interesting that reviews don't normally mention how tedious something is in an open world game, but apparently this is tedious enough to merit mention. GameSpot says pretty much the same, talking about the final act, says that you've got to go through these 20 or more siege battles, and you're going to need really powerful orcs to do it. The most telling line there is, more than once I felt like giving up on this quest, thinking I'd stumbled onto some optional side content that was clearly only made for obsessed completionists, but enduring on, I found that finishing every stage unlocks the final cutscene and credits. It did not feel worth it. A Games Radar article on how to get yourself epic and legendary orcs pretty much makes mention of the fact that loot boxes are the only reliable way to do it. You can try dominating some orcs to get some legendaries. You can also try dying and hoping that through a series of things that you have no control over, the orc that killed you does turn out to be one that's suitably powerful and desirable. Basically, in-game it's up to nothing but luck as to whether you can get an epic or legendary, and it sounds grindy as heck, but as with many modern video games now, you can just spend real-world cash on top of the cash you've already spent on one of 3 different versions of this game to get that guarantee. Bringing up the rear, you've got Waypoint, with its headline Shadow of War and Forza 7 are poisoning the concept of loot boxes, which mostly just backs up what the others have said. I do take issue with that headline though, because it suggests that loot boxes aren't fucking poison to begin with. Microtransactions, were the thing that was okay in certain circumstances that were then poisoned by loot boxes. Which is a shame because, like a lot of ideas, the core concept of the loot box ain't that bad, it's just that of course they married it to microtransactions to turn it into the fucking gambling thing, instead of just something you can have in-game as sort of RNG based loot, which I wouldn't have a problem with. In fact, I'd probably fucking love that. I like random stuff, I like random loot. In fact, that's part of why loot boxes are so dangerous to someone like me. Why I find them so fucking exploitative, why I find their use inexcusable. Loot boxes were poison long before Shadow of War and Forza 7 came along. They just made it even more potent, even more lethal, even nastier. And if indeed Shadow of War's true ending is locked behind this pointless additional grind, so bad that reviewers have pointed it out. Like I said, I've not reviewed it myself yet, but I'm going to take a very, very dim view of that, thank you very much, my friendos. It's funny, without the loot boxes, without the microtransactions, there was no way Warner Brothers Interactive wasn't going to make a boatload of money off this game anyway. It's a Lord of the Rings game, a sequel to a critical and commercial success. It's got multiple special editions, the obligatory season pass, a sponsorship with Totino's. Without the gambling, it is going to make so much money, inconceivable amounts of money. And yet, to Warner Brothers, inconceivable amounts of money wasn't enough money. To publishers all over the world, inconceivable amounts of money isn't enough money. I'm trying to imagine being the sort of human being who thinks like that, and I can't. That too is inconceivable. I can't be that much of a wanker.